Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today's question asks if I can analyze the mental health and personality factors that may be at work in the Stephen Paddock case. Just a reminder, I'm not diagnosing anybody in this video, only speculating about what could be happening in a situation like this. If you enjoy this video, please like it, subscribe to my channel, and consider supporting me on Patreon. I'll put the link to Patreon in the description for this video. So here I'll be looking at the background of Stephen Paddock, moving to the crime, and then I'll cover the mental health and personality factors. So starting with the background, Stephen Paddock was born on April 9, 1953 in Clinton, Iowa. He was the oldest of 4 boys. Even though he was born in Iowa, he grew up in Tucson, Arizona, and Los Angeles, California. His father, Benjamin Paddock, was a bank robber who was arrested in 1960, was convicted, and escaped custody in 1969. It does not appear as though Benjamin spent a lot of time with Stephen throughout Stephen's life. Robbing banks and escaping from prison takes a lot of commitment, takes a lot of energy, right? So he just didn't have any more time for Stephen. Stephen learned to be independent by coping with his family's financial difficulties. So he grew up in a family that had trouble in the area of money, and he became more resilient because of this. He would graduate from high school in 1971 and from California State University in 1977. His degree was in business administration. Stephen had a number of jobs in his career. He was a postal worker. At one time he worked for the IRS. Another time he worked as an auditor. And he ran a real estate business with his brother. He owned apartment buildings in California and Texas, as well as other properties. When he sold his real estate business in 2015, he made between $5 and $6 million. Stephen was married twice, once in 1977 and again in 1985. Both of those marriages ended in divorce. He had a girlfriend at the time of the shooting. He had met her in a casino where she worked. Stephen was well known to staff at several casinos in Las Vegas. He gambled quite a bit of money. He spent a lot of time at one particular casino, the Mandalay Bay, but he also spent quite a bit of time at Wynn Las Vegas and other casinos. He would spend excessive amounts of time, usually at night, in front of video poker machines, playing several hundred hands each hour. It was not unusual for him to bet $100 or more on each hand. He usually played on high-limit machines, so these machines were away from the main gambling floor, not a lot of noise, not a lot of flashing lights. Rather, they were placed in a separate room that had its own attendants and restrooms. When in the casinos and when gambling, Stephen exhibited several behaviors. He would not move his body very much when he was gambling, so he was laser-focused on his task. He didn't smile or really talk to too many people at the casinos. He was described as stoic and stern and difficult to read. When somebody would get up from a video poker machine to take a break, he would sit down at that machine and act like nothing happened. He would stare at people who were playing various games. Some described him as creepy. Those weren't the only interesting things about Stephen's gambling behavior. He was a serious gambler in terms of understanding the games. He didn't view it as playing. He viewed it as his job. He tried to determine the odds of winning and losing particular hands, and he believed he was quite good at it. Stephen played at a lot of casinos. One was the Mandalay Bay, as I mentioned. For the machines that he played, the payout was 99.17%, which means that from a $100 wager, the gambler could expect to win $99.17. So the margin in favor of the house was small, but it really added up, especially with these high-stakes gamblers. Stephen received a lot of benefits from the casinos, referred to as comps or kickback rewards. Even though Stephen mathematically was destined to lose money, he could make up some of that with those comps, even ending up at above 100% in terms of the value to him. So yes, he was going to lose money pretty much all the time, but the free hotel rooms, the alcohol, and the other benefits, in his mind, may have made up for that financial loss. In the months preceding the shooting, Stephen drank alcohol excessively and had access to Valium, which he was legally prescribed. One of the prescriptions for Valium was filled 4 months before the crime. Stephen appeared depressed to some. His girlfriend said that he reported losing a lot of money, which contributed to feelings of depression. He also became less affectionate toward his girlfriend. Stephen owned a number of firearms. He had purchased about 29 firearms between 1982 and September of 2016. Most of these were handguns and shotguns. Stephen started purchasing more firearms in October of 2016. Between that time and September of 2017, he bought about 55 firearms. Most of them were rifles. Now, we see different reports about the numbers, like how many were involved. As I mentioned, it was around 55, but other reports indicate a different quantity. Either way, there was an increase in firearm buying behavior and a switch from handguns and shotguns over to rifles.
Most people who suffer as children grow out of it and become upstanding, decent human beings. But serial killers who've suffered as children repeat the same mistakes over the course of their lives. They can't make the transition into adulthood. They have trouble making the transition in middle age. And at the very time in their lives when they feel they should be reaching the pinnacle of success, they find that they're sliding downhill fast. They want to feel important. They want to feel special. They crave the sense of power and dominance and control, but they simply can't achieve it in any respectable way. And at the very time in their lives when they feel they should be reaching the pinnacle of success, they find that they're sliding downhill fast. They want to feel important. They want to feel special. They crave the sense of power and dominance and control, but they simply can't achieve it in any respectable way. And so they kill and they torture and they sodomize and dismember, and that makes them feel good about themselves.
His girlfriend said that he reported losing a lot of money, which contributed to feelings of depression. He also became less affectionate toward his girlfriend. Stephen owned a number of firearms. He had purchased about 29 firearms between 1982 and September of 2016. Most of these were handguns and shotguns. Stephen started purchasing more firearms in October of 2016. Between that time and September of 2017, he bought about 55 firearms. Most of them were rifles. Now, we see different reports about the numbers, like how many were involved. As I mentioned, it was around 55, but other reports indicate a different quantity. Either way, there was an increase in firearm buying behavior and a switch from handguns and shotguns over to rifles. 2 weeks before the crime, Stephen sent his girlfriend to the Philippines, her native country. Depending on the report, Stephen sent her $100,000 or $150,000 to be used to buy a house over in the Philippines. Now moving to the crime. Stephen checked into the Mandalay Bay Hotel and Casino on September 25, 2017. His room was on the 32nd floor. On September 29, he added a room that was adjacent to his room, so he had 2 rooms now on the 32nd floor. He was permitted to use the service elevator, and he transported 23 rifles, 1 handgun, and thousands of rounds of ammunition to his room. On October 1, 2017, Stephen Paddock used screws to secure the doors on the 32nd floor, like the doors that would come up into the hallways. He placed a camera on a service cart outside his room so he could see in the hallway. He fired on a security guard who tried to enter the 32nd floor. This was right before 10 o'clock p.m. At 10:05 p.m., Stephen opened fire from a window in his hotel room into a crowd of 22,000 people who were attending a concert at the Route 91 Harvest Music Festival. He fired over 1,000 rounds in 10 minutes. 58 people were killed and 869 were wounded. At some point after he stopped shooting, Stephen died as a result of a single self-inflicted gunshot wound. The police did not make entry into his hotel room until 11:20 p.m. Now moving to the mental health and personality factors. In the case of Stephen Paddock, due to the circumstances of his death, there was no mental health assessment. We don't see any meaningful history available in terms of his mental health. We have these reports from individuals whose credibility is really unknown. The official investigation indicated that there was no single or clear motivating factor for the crime. So this really just adds to the mystery. Nobody knows why Stephen Paddock killed innocent people. Let's look at some of the characteristics of Stephen Paddock. It's believed that Stephen may have been passive-aggressive, narcissistic, had obsessive-compulsive personality features, and he may have been bored easily. He had no political or religious affiliation. We see this one report from an unemployed chef who said that Stephen talked about Ruby Ridge, the Waco tragedy, and believed that the federal government's response to Hurricane Katrina was practice for the military to start invading homes and taking firearms.
They said he posted on social media he was just bored. That's really what it's all about. These white supremacists, look, they sit up in these little white supremacist enclaves like Thousand Oaks. They get hopped up on that Trump juice, and they're watching white supremacist Tucker Carlson on Fox News hype them up on how supreme they are and how everybody's the enemy and how they should get their guns and there's a big threat coming their way. So they get all hyped up and they have no way to release it. Ain't no black people around there. That's why people say, well, how is he a white supremacist if he's shooting other white people? Who else he gonna shoot? Ain't no black people in Thousand Oaks. I was one of the few when I left. So ain't no black people around there, especially a large number where you can just go out in a bang. So you go off on people who just you had a disagreement with. Evidently, he had a problem at that club before. He had some kind of issue at that club before.
Good morning. Well, police say they found in the Mandalay Bay Hotel back here, that room was filled with weapons, as many as 10 weapons in the room that this gunman was using to shoot down into the crowd that was gathered for this concert on the other side of the Las Vegas Strip. Now, cell phone video is helping investigators put together exactly what happened. Many of the people gathered there say it was the scariest time of their life. Initially, many thought the pops they heard were fireworks associated with the show, but soon it became obvious that this was an attack. What sounded like automatic gunfire rang out late Sunday night. The bullets spraying into a crowd of roughly 22,000 concertgoers on the Las Vegas Strip. These videos captured the chaos unfolding on the ground. There was confusion about where the bullets were coming from, or even if they were bullets. Some were frozen in panic. Others fled for their lives.
And all of a sudden we heard pop, 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 countless of times, and we all thought it was firecrackers. And then it kept on going, and then he quiet for a bit, then he fired another 15, 20 rounds, and that's when he realized it was a fully automatic.
Police say the gunshots came from above.
There was an active shooter that was firing rounds from the 32nd floor. We are still going through the search warrant actively at this time, but it's in excess of 10 rifles.
The suspect is now dead, and authorities are still trying to piece together the scope of the carnage.
Right now, we need your truck. We just need to get people over to the hospital, okay?
Okay. The injured were scattered all along the Las Vegas Strip. Bystanders tried to get those hit by gunfire to the hospital any way they could.
Some were falling and some were screaming and yelling and running. So everyone was just like literally laying on top of each other, trying to get out of the way.
It was a terrible night here in Las Vegas, and as the sun comes up here this morning, we're bracing for even worse, with more than 400 people in the hospital, many of them in critical condition. The sheriff has warned that the death toll could well rise above 50. Jeff?
Yes, the answer to the first question, the white supremacists, they practice killing each other. Killing is fun.